Yeah. I went to get another cup of coffee. Yes. um, thinking about it, I've had some experiences with some people where they thought being a teenager was really fun. But they were adults and they were in their 30s. Yes. And I remember one guy telling me that women just love this thought of being back in high school. Now the problem is that I'm 48 years old. Yeah. But I think that there's a real need for volunteers that when they have an orgasm, they would actually come their memories of what it was like being a teenager. Ooh. You know, somehow, yes, somebody decided that as adults we wouldn't have much of a sense of humor. Yeah. And that sexuality would be very serious business. Yes, it would. And we'd use our sexual nerve endings as a way to communicate instead of laughing about loving each other. Now, could you get me all the employees of Victoria's Secret? I think they're one of the largest undergarment manufacturer and retailers of undergarments. Yes. And then all of the consumer credit that's extended to those that buy their underwear from there. Now, I was going to start a little business selling lingerie, and I thought I'd have 10 different designers. But my thought is that looking at the infographics, yes, of the different decades of lingerie, yeah, some of them could be very funny. Oh, now let's say we're in the office, and you know that you're Stepforded. You're really programmed, and in your thought, every time that you have a sexual experience, it's very frustrating because you don't find it humorous anymore. You don't see your own sexuality the way that it really is. Now, when you were in high school, yes, could have been 2 years ago, it could have been 40 years ago, but for some reason, every time that you had an orgasm, somebody said you were going to come to find out, and you were going to use your sexual nerve endings as the way to do that. Oh. All of a sudden, it's not funny. In fact, it's not fun. Ouch. In fact, you have a very big reluctance to embrace your sexuality because somebody decided that we were going to be the surveillance generation. You were going to know everything about us. Now, let's say you're a larger breasted woman. You might have bought your panties at Victoria's Secret. And you thought, well, I'm gonna wear 1900s lingerie, big bloomers and whatever the garments were for women of that decade. Yes. And the thought is that in the office or as volunteers, that as you try on different decades of lingerie, you're going to come your actual teenage memories. You're going to remember what's funny, your sense of humor. You're going to be able to laugh about the seriousness of being Stepforded. Now, my thought was that we would reprogram the programming of the way, yes, using the eroticism of women, but I actually need some women that were, they did laugh their asses off when they were in puberty. Pooch! And in their minds, well, actually, there's some teenagers that really don't think anything's funny. Now, let's say you think that the 1920s was the attractive decade of lingerie. Yes, you did. And you don't mind modeling in the office. Yes, you're the 1920s, pooch. But the puppet remembers, and the person has forgotten the Stepford. I'm going to need for you to program your sexuality that when you have the orgasm, you actually are going to reprogram the humor of being pubescent in puberty. Yes. Now, there's a woman that I find very attractive that I thought that would want to wear a different kind of lingerie, and most of them from the 1940s, 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, the 90s. We could even go back a decade ago to the 2000s. Now, what if every time you did have that loving sexual experience, you were to pull back, yes, your actual memories of being a teenager? Now, I think that there are actual volunteers that would be willing to model different decades of lingerie. And instead of coming their adult eroticism, 35s to 60s, yes, they would think about what it was like when they were 14 years old, right now.